Before we go into your first career and starting the business, I'd actually love to unpack maybe your childhood a little bit. I know you mentioned in other interviews that you were creative. I believe you were interested in like woodworking. You wanted to be an animator at some point. So I'm just curious, where did that come from and what was really driving you as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I low-key would love to still be an animator at some
I
point.
know, I was like, you kind of are in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way. I mean, I think as a kid, I just really loved creating. Like as far as I could remember, like I still even think about the notebooks and things I had where I would just doodle stuff. I always loved cartoons, always loved drawing. If I look back on it now, it's probably because I kind of like the escape from reality. And then also I probably was experiencing a flow state as a kid where it's like something that could really like keep me focused and I was just genuinely interested in.
I love that. And it's interesting to kind of always like reflect back on our interests and passions as a kid, because you didn't necessarily go into that. You kind of went down the route of what you're supposed to do, right? You studied engineering, you landed a dream job at Google after college. So tell me more about maybe the expectations, whether it was your family that you into that, or why you kind of deviated a bit from that creative interest that you had.
Yeah, for sure. As you pegged it, yes, I was encouraged by the parents to choose a more realistic job because I also distinctly remember in my childhood that my parents were like, "You're going to be a starving artist if you become an animator or an artist or whatnot." Which actually originally I was like, then I'll be, they really like praise doctors and how eye doctors could have like flexible schedules. So actually there was a time in my childhood where I was like, I'm going to be an eye doctor who works 3 days a week so I could be a comic book artist the other 2 days of the week.
Probably you were okay with that. They're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I chose engineering because something more practical, quote unquote practical. Actually, at that time, I was really into piano also as a kid, and I kind of wanted to be a pro pianist as well. But discouraged to go down this creative route and encouraged to get a job with a 401k work at a company that has a brand name, right? And it's like a quote unquote respectable thing and climb the whole corporate ladder and whatnot.
Yes. Oh, I definitely know what that was like. I remember I was in finance for a bit, and when I worked at JP Morgan, my parents were so happy. The brand name, I'm like, now I'm like, I could care less about that stuff, but the quote unquote brand name, I just got some flashbacks. They were like, this is amazing.
My husband started at JP Morgan too. Actually.
Oh, did he? I mean, great place to start. And, it's interesting. Well, I'll save this question for later because I actually do think working at a corporate company or working for someone else is actually great stepping stones for starting your business. I know I'm kind of fast forwarding, but reflecting back, are you happy you had that time before you kind of launched and did your own thing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely look back on it and I see the kind of, I guess, expectations and rigor I have about how people collaborate and how you think about problems and like the kind of people that you want to hire, how you build the team and things like that is all stuff that I don't think I was not explicitly taught during my time at Google, but it's just something that you pick up like working in those environments.
Totally. No, I completely agree. So, you're at Google, you're doing well. I'm sure your parents are happy. You get promoted to be a manager, which is a right next step. And you've mentioned, which is super interesting, that it shattered your confidence. So I'm curious, like what was actually going behind the scenes that maybe people didn't see from the outside?
Yeah. I mean, I think extreme imposter syndrome was happening. I think I was 26 at the time. And so fairly young to be a senior UX designer, a manager, UX lead. Back then, also, there were a lot less women. I have a sense that there are a lot more women in UX design nowadays. But like on that team, pretty much on almost every team I've been on, like during my 7 years at Google, I was one of the only women managing a team of men who had many, many more years of experience than me, managing peers because I inherited a team. So it felt a little bit like I needed to constantly prove myself. Like, why am I the chosen one? How do I position myself as the manager now instead of their peer? And then for me, it manifested in like, for the first time in my life, like a bunch of very obvious mental health issues, like anxiety, loss of appetite, insomnia. That's when
Wow.
I started like going to see a therapist and things like that. Yeah, I think the other thing going on there, as someone who even, as a kid, as we were saying, like I just loved making things and creating things, there was no like tangible output at the end of the day as a manager. It's like conversations you have, like you can coach people and influence people, but you can't point at something and be like, I made that at the end of the day. And that really, I think, ate at me. And then also, like, at least the way it was at Google when I was there is when you first become a manager, it's not like you stop doing all IC work, individual contributor work. So it was like on top of doing the managerial stuff, which I'd never done before, still had to be like the most like work on the most complicated projects that have the highest like risk, highest impact to the team. So it's just like a lot of stuff at once.
Yeah. And you were, like you said, you were quite young, 26, 27, like late 20s, and you were managing people older than you. You were in a position that wasn't like the individual contributor only. It was added to the work that you enjoyed, it seemed like at the time. And, I appreciate you opening up about, the mental health issues you were going through and you were seeing a therapist. Were you able to identify what was going on? Was it the imposter syndrome and the self-doubt and it being difficult to manage? Was that the core piece of what was really keeping you up at night?
I think there was that. And then also this fear of kind of being told and being outwardly shown that like you have so much promise, you're going to do great things. Like, you're being fast tracked. Yeah. And like, don't blow the opportunity type of pressure. And like, you're so fortunate that you're in this position. Yeah. I think that was part of it too.
Yeah. So much pressure. And I know, at that point, I believe that's when how did you even pick up crocheting? Like, how did that really, I guess, change this low point that you were in your life? Because you don't really hear that like typically that crocheting can really help build your confidence. So I'm curious to kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. I think basically I came to this realization that I identified too much with my job. That,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, if there is so much, when you put all the eggs in that basket and it's not like living up to the expectations that you have, then all of a sudden, for me, I was like, who am I? What am I?
Yes.
So that's why I started dabbling more again into things outside of like more creative things outside of work. I guess again, kind of tapping back into being like, when did I think I was happiest? When I was making tangible stuff, like even as a kid. So I picked up a bunch of different hobbies like woodworking, Japanese pottery, crocheting. But crocheting, I think, really stuck with me because that was something that like could do at any point. Like I could do it in the comfort of my own home. Doesn't require that much materials compared to those other things I was trying to work on. And then it's super versatile in terms of what you could make. And then I still, for me, again, drawn to like cartoons and cute things and stuff. Like I in particular really enjoyed making plushies and cute toys and things like that. So yeah, that act of learning how to crochet basically reminded me that I still have it in me to learn something new. And that like, hey, if I could learn how to do this thing, maybe I could learn how to be a better manager or learn how to do something else.
Yes, I love what you said about if you're too focused on your job. I actually think that's relatable to your business because it can be all consuming. I'm like, you need to have a life outside of it or it's the pressure is just too much. It's like all encompassing. And you're right, even for a job, it's the same thing. So very healthy to have outside hobbies. And for me, like the podcast is one of those. It kind of zooms me out and this is my way of being creative. So I love that you were also looking for that. And crocheting was, one of the many things that you picked up. And I love that, you're right. You're able to kind of do it anywhere. So if you're feeling like you need a break or you need a disconnect, you can just kind of pick it up and create something. And I'm curious because, fast forward, it became your business. But when did you realize like, okay, you're working on this hobby, you're loving, the creative aspect. When were you like, oh, this needs to be a business? Because it's a random thought to have, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, originally, I had hoped that I could turn crochet into more of a passive business because I had seen that there are these pattern designers out there who are just selling PDF patterns. And I was like, as someone who only ever worked in the digital world, I was like, I have no idea how physical goods work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to deal with inventory and things like that.
That's true.
So that was actually my original thought that like, maybe I could just write patterns. I did not crack the code on that. That's
And
like
when
a
you
whole
mean
other
write
marketing thing.
patterns, are you saying create patterns for crocheting?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess sort of like writing a recipe, but for crocheting, and then you sell that recipe instructions. Yeah. But yeah, I did not find success doing that. And then so therefore it became more of a like, actually, it's my husband, I think, who had that insight, who was like, well, not enough people know how to crochet these things. You got to teach them. And then I did have a background working on, like, my specialty at my time at Google was on education tech. So I did have a background of like trying to understand how people learn, how do you, as a UX designer, it's like you're trying to help people succeed in whatever task they're trying to do. So I was like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. And were you, picking up crocheting, were you happier in your job, or were you still like, you know what, I would love to figure out something on the side. Maybe I'll leave. Like, what was the mindset working at Google at the time? Were you looking to make a leap at some point, or that you still wanted just a passive income working on something on the side?
I have never actually identified as someone who wanted to start their own business. I
I love
am more,
this.
yeah, it's like, how did I wind up where I am now? I am more of someone who is like, I don't know, I don't want to waste opportunity. And so my mentality at Google was that like I didn't enjoy being a manager. I did try it out for some time, and eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to give Google one last shot. I transferred to a different team, the virtual reality, augmented reality team, to focus on education, going back to an IC role, because I was like, if this doesn't do it for me, nothing else is going to do it for me at Google. So I didn't actually have the idea to like do the Woobles or have a business while I was at Google. We actually started the Woobles 2 years after I left Google.
So tell me, so you left Google. Were you consulting or doing anything after Google?
I was nervous about seeing my bank account numbers go down, so I did take a part-time job teaching user experience design.
Okay.
Although I do kind of regret like not just having a total freedom with of my time.
I know, right? I know. When you get used to making like income that's stable, it's so tough to leave that, right? And just not bring in income when, you're fine. But wait, that's super interesting. I did not know that you left Google 2 years later. The idea for Woobles came about. So were you that unhappy at Google where you're like, listen, it's just not worth it. I'm just going to do part-time until I figure out my passions or the next job. Like, what was going on in your mind then? That's a big leap.
Exactly. I was just like, all I know is that okay, I guess that actually one part that probably really tipped me over the edge was that my parents saw how unhappy I was, and they were like, if you are this unhappy, my parents, who were like,
That's
you
like
gotta
a
get
big
this
deal coming from
practical
them.
job at a brand name company with a 401k, and they're like, if this is what's happening to you, it's not worth it. And I'm
Wow,
like,
that's big.
damn. Yeah. So that's how bad it was in terms of like my mental health. So yeah, I was kind of like, I just got to leave. I don't have anything lined up after. I mean, I guess I did because I did that part-time job, but it's like, I don't have like very concrete thoughts of what to do after. All I knew was like, I need to get out. I'm burnt out. I need to just do whatever the hell makes me happy, basically.
Yes. Wow. Well, I mean, I know you were mentioning just what a bad place you were in. So I'm so glad you took that leap and did part-time. And yeah, burnout is real. So I think I'm still recovering from my time in banking, or actually
Oh.
I'm feeling much better. It took some time, but it's definitely no joke. So that is super interesting. I love that you said you never thought you'd start a business, because I hear from so many women founders, just because of the function of the podcast, who are like, like, I'm an introvert. I don't really see myself as a founder. I'm like, listen, I've interviewed hundreds of women. Like, there's no right way to look or be or experience. Like, there's so many walks of life. So I love that you're like, I never thought I would be a business owner. So it seems like you were crocheting. And what was the impetus, I guess, 2 years after you left Google, of like, oh, let's like make this thing and educate people? What was that point in your life like?
So that lines up with COVID. So at that point, I did have an Etsy shop, and then naturally the Etsy shop started taking off a bit more. And then back then I do remember like, oh, if the Etsy shop makes like maybe $2,000 a year, I'll keep it open for next year. So yeah, that's really like how we started seeing traction, and we were like, all right, we still were, both of us, unemployed, me and my husband, now
Oh,
husband.
your husband too. Wait, tell me
Yeah.
about this. So yeah, when did he decide to take the leap, and did he have any aspirations or ideas at the time, or was he also just kind of exploring, taking a break? I love this.
Yeah. So my husband is actually the entrepreneurial one between the two of us. So he left his job in banking. He was a trader. He left it actually a few months before I did, and he had a concrete idea. I always say he was pursuing a cryptocurrency startup before it was cool.
Really?
Yeah. But it didn't pan out. And so he's the one who's more into like, we were trying out other business ideas actually together, as well as we were just like traveling. Cause again, we were just like, oh, we're
Oh, that's
tired
nice.
of life. And yeah, we need a break. My husband and I often reflect because I'm like, I don't understand why he started helping out with the Woobles, and he doesn't remember either. My husband is also just generally a very like, he loves to help. He loves like helping other people achieve their dreams and things like that. So I'm like, I'm sure he's around me 24/7 ever since 2018. He probably just was like, of course I'm going to be helping Justine.
Well, and I'm curious, what were some of the other businesses you guys were dabbling in?
Yeah, I think the one that we had highest hopes for at the time was essentially a tiny home rental, short-term rental
Interesting.
company. But again, it lined up with like the time when we were like kind of ready to go and really like put the pedal to the metal was when COVID lockdown started, and we were like, it's probably not a great time to do anything in the travel space. But ironically, it would have been a good time too.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's super interesting that you guys were dabbling in stuff and you started an Etsy, page. Your goal was to make 2,000 a month, which I just think is awesome.
A
The fact
year,
that-
a year.
Oh, a year. Wait, 2,000 a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, amazing. That's even better. Listen, having low expectations is good because you don't have to push on yourself. You're like, I'm just having fun. But I love that it was coming right from a place of just fun and let me see if I can like enjoyment. It didn't seem like you were trying to live off of this business at the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because it was for me the outlet of when I said I was burnt out at Google, I just want to do what makes me happy. What makes me happy was like, I designed this cute little penguin, and other people now can make this penguin.
Yeah, which isn't easy, but I know you guys, I mean, you didn't have a big volume at the time, but you were creating it from your house, right? Like nothing crazy. You would assemble the kits in your garage. At what point were you like, there's something here? And your husband obviously was helping you on the side and supporting you, but when did you realize that there's something really special here and it's not going to be a 2,000 a year business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one sign was when Google stopped auto-correcting the woobles into the wobbles. It
Oh,
used to
that's
be like,
exciting.
did you mean the wobbles? But also just reading customer reviews and then interviewing them. Like with my background in UX, I always want to talk to like the end customer. And then hearing these stories about how much it impacted people's lives. I was like, damn, that is like some connection that this product can make with people where when I look back on it, I don't think I have that type of like experience with any brands that I've bought from where I feel like an emotional connection that like this thing changed my life, helped me like make me feel better about myself or encourage me to like take some sort of leap.
Yes. I mean, that's really powerful. And I love the fact that you were chatting with customers so early on to see the impact and putting their thoughts and feelings around something, because it's so easy just to see orders come in and not really understand the person behind it. And I think that's so important. I mean, really at any phase, I was going to say early in your business, but also really any phase, I still think it's important to stay close to the customer. But when I was reviewing some of your just other interviews, I believe, so you launched in 2020, you had mentioned in COVID, like July 2020, or was that your Etsy shop? July 2020?
July 2020 is our Shopify site.
Shopify. Yeah. Okay. So when did you realize, all right, let's make it into a Shopify account? Was Etsy doing well? Because I know by the next year, you're already surpassing 1 million in sales. So you were like far going past your goal. So what really shifted you to go into Shopify and helped you with that traction?
Yeah. Before Shopify, I think we actually even tried Squarespace and other platforms because we're so scrappy. We're basically like, we don't want to pay the like, I feel like it's only like $20 a month or something like that. We're like, hells no. But I think we eventually were like, okay, it's actually built for e-commerce, so we should probably use it. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. We had this idea where it's like, well, we need to spread the word more effectively. Like if it only exists on Etsy, it basically only shows up on Etsy searches. And like if you pay for ads on Etsy, that would also capture Google searches. But we were like, we need to be able to drive more traffic to it. And also just like, if we want it to turn into more of a brand, like we need to own that brand instead of it just being like a thing that's sold on Etsy.
Yes, that makes sense. And what really, you mentioned like you would do some Etsy ads. So once you were on Shopify, and I love that you guys are so scrappy, which is why I wanted you on, like what really helped you get to that $1 million mark a year in?
Yeah, I think it's a combo of ads, social media ads, and then also word of mouth. Like I was telling you how people genuinely have this connection. And then when you have this connection and you feel so proud of this thing that you made, you want to like tell all your friends and family and show it off. It really spreads it. And actually, that feeling is called fiero. It's like that feeling you get when you accomplish something you once thought was impossible. And it
Oh, yeah.
really is like encapsulated by, for our product, it's like you look at that pile of yarn, you're like, there's no way I can turn that into a penguin. And then huzzah, you have a
Me.
penguin. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, I'm so awesome. I got to tell everybody about how awesome I am now.
Yeah, so that feedback loop is there. And I'm curious because someone might look at you, especially in the early days, and they're like, Justine, like, how are you going to make money on crochet? I don't even know if it's the right, like crochet toys, or I don't know the right terminology for it. Were people kind of questioning you and your husband on kind of going all into this idea?
Yeah. I mean, even now today, I
I
think
know.
we have some people who are like, do you guys do this full time? It's like
Yeah.
100% it's full time.
And it's a legit business, which I think is so amazing.
Yeah, I find it more funny that, like, for my husband, given his background as a Wall Street trader, that like just the change of what he does for work now, and like when ex coworkers discover what he does, and it's like you sell yarn on the internet. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yes, I do. And yeah, for sure, our parents had some, especially in the early days, doubts. They'd remind us that like, hey, Google's opening an office here, like only a few minutes away. You want to go back to that job, or like, I don't know, open up a UX agency because that's more related to what you actually know how to do.
I'm sure. And I know you guys were just buying the yarn, creating it yourself, like shipping it from your house for so long. And you mentioned even earlier in the interview, like you came from the digital world. So a physical product is so different. What was maybe some of the more challenging aspects early in the business for you?
QC is definitely like in a physical
Quality
world,
control.
quality control, insanely challenging. The level of rigor of quality control, or like specking things for something that's physical, is like a whole other level compared to something digital. Because like I would spec things all the time as a UX designer, but yeah, making sure it's kind of like realizing that anything that could go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. And, I'm curious it seems like when you were in that manager role at Google, you had fears of not, maybe you had mentioned you had imposter syndrome. Did you ever have those feelings when you were running your own business? Because like you said, what you think won't go wrong will go wrong. It's not easy. Everything always takes longer, I feel like. But did you have any mental health issues in the early days, or was it not even comparable to Google? Because I feel like it's different, but it is all encompassing as well in a different aspect.
Yeah, I definitely had some mental health issues in the beginning, but I don't know how much of it is tied up with being like it being COVID. You're basically like stuck
Sure.
at home all the time. Plus so we used to live in New York. We moved to North Carolina because my husband's parents were living there. We were like, we got to get out of New York for COVID. We took my parents. So then we wound up living with like our parents for 2 years after having not lived with them for many years before that. So like the
Doing
toll
Woobles
doing the
too.
Woobles, and they
Wow.
also helped, like they are theoretically employees number 1 to 4, where they did free manual labor for us like all the time to help us create the kits and stuff. So I think there's some amount of like mental health affected, where it's like such a grind of constantly working. When I say constantly working, like we didn't even take breaks to like cook food or clean or whatever, because we were living with our parents. So it was just like every single waking moment dedicated to how do you work on some other part of the business. But I would say it's not comparable to how I felt during my time at Google, because I think the ups felt a lot bigger, and that helped.
I love that. And I'm always curious because it's funny when I was in finance. I'd be curious about your husband too, but like I'm like, oh, I can, and I'm sure you at Google, it's like, oh, we know what it's like to work hard. Like it's a piece of cake. So starting a business, I'm like, I know what it is to work hard. I work already 7 days a week. At least I can do my own thing. But the stress of like everything really being all on you, it's a different pressure. Like I basically what I'm trying to say is I thought I had it in the bag because I'm like, I've gone through such hardship in my corporate job. And like, I've proven that I can do it, but it was such a transition in starting your own business. And I guess you kind of stay in it because the highs are higher, but I don't know if I'm making sense, but it was just a different transition in the stress. Did you feel that way as well?
Yeah, I agree. This pressure of like, if me or my husband did not do something, it literally will not be getting done.
I know.
And so, yeah, that like we could make it or break it accidentally from our action or inaction. Yeah, that type of pressure is not something that I feel like a corporate job, yeah, prepared me for. You know, on that note, like when some certain things happen where it's like we have no expertise on it, like why did something quite terrible happen and we need to fix it? Like back in the Google days, I feel like what it would be is like you'd find the right team member to who has the expertise, who could fix it, and you could like pass it off to them and be okay, like they're gonna solve it, versus it's like nope, you don't have that option when it's just you.
Yes. And how did you guys deal with those times, right? Because you both didn't come from this world. You guys didn't have a physical product, let alone like in the world of crochet. So do you remember a moment where something crashed or didn't go well and you're like, dang, like we're not the experts. Like, what did you guys do at the time?
Yeah, so I mean the earliest really big bang that happened was iOS 14, where it totally like destroyed the effectiveness of Meta ads, Facebook, Instagram ads. And so like overnight, it felt like our business basically had like almost no demand. Like we were sitting in the waters, and like even to this day I kind of feel like social media ads are a bit of a black box. It got to the point that we thought there was something wrong with the Shopify site itself, because like I was the one who made the Shopify site and I'm like, who am I'm not a Shopify developer to be qualified for this. So what we wound up doing was, at the time we were working with an agency and they also couldn't figure it out because this is like something affecting literally everybody. So we decided to stop working with them and cut back on ad spend to save some money. And then that's also when we realized like, you know, we should focus on what we can control, which was, we'd always heard that like, hey, sending emails, that's a thing. Selling things to your returning customers. And actually up until that point, we had only ever sold like 5 kit designs. And so that was the impetus to create a new design. And then realizing that like, oh, people actually want more designs. We should probably be designing more kits.
Yeah, that is so interesting. So like it really sparked this new era of you guys doing emails. So kind of pushing returning customers, creating new products for these returning customers. And I believe so, you know, I don't know when that change happened, but you guys ended up going on Shark Tank in 2022. So tell me more about the thought process with that. Like, when did you apply, or did they reach out to you? And was it also you guys thinking, okay, like we need to figure out a way to get awareness? Or yeah, would love to kind of get in your brains about that.
Yeah. So they approached us. I am someone, you know, it's funny how you said you interview a lot of people who are like, I'm an introvert and things like that. I am the same way. I am like, I am camera shy. I do not want to be on national TV. Like we said no multiple times, actually. We were like, we don't want to be going on Shark Tank. But then at the end, we were kind of like, well, that's not very woobly of us. Like the purpose of our company is to kind of, you know, encourage people to try things, get out of your comfort zone, try things you wouldn't otherwise have tried before. And then again, going with that theme of like, I think my husband and I really hate to waste opportunity. And so it was like, this is an opportunity. And they kept reminding us at any point you could be cut. So we were like, all right, like probably going to get cut at some point. Let's just see how far it goes. I do feel like in general, that is how we have approached this business, where it's just like, let's see how far it can go. Let's see like, you know, how much traction we can keep on generating. So we did not get cut. We did wind up airing and being on Shark Tank. And it was a very nerve-wracking experience. And I think for us, it was, yeah, we wanted to spread awareness. We genuinely also wanted to work with Mark Cuban and Lori because we had heard really great things. But we were also very nervous about like what happens on Shark Tank truly is what happens like real time there. So it's sort of like, you know, we spent all this time pouring our heart, blood, money, like sweat and tears and stuff into the Woobles, and you say the wrong thing or you look like a fool by mistake on national TV, like could it come crumbling down? That was our number one priority, to like make sure we don't accidentally damage the baby that we made.
Yeah. And was there, I mean, I've had some women on the podcast who also were on Shark Tank, and I've heard different things, but what did the prep look like for you guys? I've had people say, like, in a beautiful way, it was the best thing because it really made me like prep everything on the business. I had other women being like, well, I knew everything because, you know, it's my business. What is there to prep for? But how was that experience for you? Was it all encompassing? Because I would feel like you don't want to mess up on national TV. And like, you know, if you're an introvert, are you like, all right, what do I need to do to make sure that I don't get nervous? Yeah, I'd love to just kind of hear that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I got the great benefit of having my husband as my co-founder. So I'm like, in my
fine
view,
with
I'm
it?
like, he gets to field what I view as the hard questions, like the numbers and things like that. And I'm like the product person. So I'm like, yeah, I know the product like the back of my hand. I can convince you why it's like so good, why it's so effective, things like that. So, but yeah, it was like definitely, I remember the pitch, like literally every down moment we had, like we'd be driving somewhere and I just say to my husband, hi, I'm Justine. And that's the trigger for like us to just like do the pitch. Or like, I think we watched like every episode of the season beforehand for a week, like over dinner, and then would like pause and answer the questions the sharks would ask, things like that.
I love all that. And looking back, are you happy you got, I mean, you know, I'm sure you got a great awareness being on there, but what was it like, you know, post show going live? Like, are you happy you ended up doing it because it was something that you were saying no to initially?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy that we went on it again with I think post Google Life, I'm just very like, I really value experiences, and Shark Tank is truly a very once in a lifetime experience. And so I'm glad that we got the chance to do that. Like, it's not something that was ever on my radar of a thing that would happen in my life.
I love it. I appreciate how open you are to different experiences, because someone could say, you know, Justine, you're an introvert. Like, it's so easy to be like, no, and then just go in your box and just like build a business and stay inside. And, you know, I appreciate you going outside your comfort zone and pushing yourself out there. And I think that's like a huge quality for any successful entrepreneur, because every day you're dealing with something that's outside of your comfort zone. So is that something that comes naturally to you? Because I would think, you know, in corporate, I mean, you're still in new environments and you're learning new things, but you know, when you start your own business, there is really no expert, like you said. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Was that difficult for you to manage, or how has that process been for you?
It really depends on the domain. And again, this is where I'm like grateful that I have my husband as my co-founder, because the things that I'm not interested in, it's like, great, he can take care of that and figure out the unknown of that. But for other things, I do think even actually at my time at Google, I have, and just in general, probably ever since college or so, like I've just been really interested in always novelties and just like trying out new experiences. So I think the other thing that I realized is that running a business is kind of like doing the user-centered design process, but just applied to something else, which is essentially you do some research, you make your best guess, you try it out in the like lowest cost, fastest way possible, get feedback and keep going, optimize it.
Yes. And that's what, and even earlier you said, like, since you guys have started this business, it was always like, let's see how far we can go. Like, you keep pushing it. And I'm curious, have you guys had certain expectations? Like, okay, we want to hit this revenue by this year, or you just kind of are in the, yeah, I love that. You're shaking your head. Like, tell me how you've thought about it. It's just, is it, you know, seeing how far you can go every day? Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess now that we have a team, we do set targets like that where we're like, okay, yeah, I guess we expected this, but it's not really based on like that much data. We're an almost 5-year-old company with a like obviously unsustainable growth rate in the beginning. But yeah, I do think we have this more mentality of just like, let's just see where it takes us. And also that what we care about is like, how do we spread this feeling of fear to as many people as possible, and get that message out and encourage more people to be open to trying new things and new experiences.
I love that. I feel like that's such a healthy mentality. I remember when we had launched the business, we were so small, and I'm like, people are like, you need a business plan, and like, you got to have certain forecasts. And I'm like, I can do all that, but like, who knows where it's going to go? Like, you have no idea what it's going to be like. Like, I had like preliminary stuff. And then by the second and third year of the business, I'm like, you know what? I have less pressure around those goals and forecasts. Of course, you have goals. It's not like we're just chilling behind the scenes, but I love how, the openness of just seeing how far it can go, being open to opportunities. Like you don't know who's going to come into your world, what the next inflection point will be. So when you're a little bit flexible and you don't have so much pressure, it allows you to be a little bit more open-minded. And I feel like the business has grown in ways I wouldn't even expect. Similar to like Shark Tank. You never thought you would even go on Shark Tank, but you guys have just been open and doing the right thing, one foot in front of the other, and look how far that's gone in you, 5 years in. So I love that. I love to hear that. And so, I believe before Shark Tank, you guys were still creating everything and shipping from your garage. Is that the case? Or
I think by that point we were manufacturing in China already.
okay.
I think. Yeah.
And when did that kind of happen? So when did that happen? And was it tough to find someone to create the products? Because you guys were doing everything hands-on so early.
Yeah. I don't actually entirely remember when it happened, but basically when we switched to the packaging that we have now, which is like printed, basically back when we only sold cotton drawstring bags that were hand stamped, that's the stuff that we made. So those are the ones that my husband and I and our family produced. So the printed colorful bags that we have now, those are manufactured and not produced by our own two hands.
I would hope that's changed. And was it tough to find someone? You mentioned, early in the interview, quality control was something that was an interesting learning experience. So was it tough to dial that in when you had a manufacturer, or was that process? Yeah.
It was incredibly painful. I truly feel like every time we thought that like, all right, we nailed it. We've like spec'd this thing to the umpteenth degree, there'd be this other random part of the kit that would like fail in some batches. And when I say it's truly like the littlest things, we have, so there are these plastic pieces in the kit called stitch markers. They're basically like paper clips. They're truly like the tiniest things. And then there was a batch of shipments where they were all breaking. Like if you unclip them, they would just break. And so that's like a few thousand kits that we had to then manually go fix with our own two hands. Even when we were manufacturing in China, there is still definitely a level of like, we still actually did have to fix things with our own two hands here.
Oh my gosh. And was there any frustration in that process where you're like, we've done this a zillion times and it's still not the specs that you want?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm like a bit of a perfectionist. And then also with my background in UX design, I'm like every little piece of the experience matters. Like it needs to be excellent on all fronts. But yeah, you just find the right partner and then you build trust over time. And I think like we're in a much, much better spot now.
You're in a better spot now. Yeah, I'm sure early on when you're small, I don't know how manufacturers are. I just have my own experience creating different kinds of products, but you're like a small fish. They don't give you that much time, but you're still trying to push. So is it better now just because you guys are a bit larger, or you found the right partner who gets you? Like what has shifted over time?
I think it's the right partner because we still work with all the same people. I think it's just over time that like we have as a group encountered all these issues that like we collectively understand the standards and the issues and stuff.
That gives me hope. I feel like manufacturing the product, especially when you're particular about many things, is a lot of back and forth, but it's worth it at the end of the day. I'm curious, like looking from the outside, it seems like Woobles is just a dream. You guys have really steadily grown over the years. And I'm just curious, are there, what would you say are maybe some of the biggest lessons you've learned about yourself along the way, or maybe with the business that you didn't know before?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think this has been really impactful in my life in terms of self-confidence. And I also think that is at the end of the day what the Woobles is trying to do for other people, help them build their own self-confidence. Because as we've talked about a few times now, it's like I never thought of myself as someone who'd be a business owner. And so it's cool to be like, oh, I can do more than I thought I was capable of. I'm a camera shy person, but like I'm doing this podcast. I was on Shark Tank. I'm in like all this social media. I feel like I can no longer say that I'm a camera shy person because now I'm just like, yep, all right. What do you want me to do? Who wants me where? I'll go
Does
for
it get easier?
I think it gets easier. Yeah. I think, a lot of times I'm talking about the business. It's easier for me when I'm talking about the business slash like personal stories about my life, like this. For building a business, I think like the biggest learning that I've realized, one is the fact that I do feel like it's like applying the design process to something bigger. But then also that bottlenecks never end. The problems never end. They just move. And so you just got to fix that bottleneck to be just good enough to hold things in place, and then address the next bottleneck.
I love that. I can't remember who was on the podcast or if it was a book I read, but it was like, if you don't have problems, that means you're not in business. And I'm like, that's just a good reminder. Because in the early days, you're like, why am I, what, there's so many issues. And I've luckily have interviewed so many women like yourself where I'm like, oh, no matter, you can be $100 million business, $200 million business, like the problems are always there. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier to be like, all right, another bottleneck. What do we got to do next? Okay, another one. What do we got to do next? So, and, I'm curious from your perspective, you've mentioned you've built so much confidence. I feel like you've really grown as this entrepreneur, even though you never looked at yourself as that. What do you think most people get wrong when it comes to starting a business? I'm sure you chat with people who are early in their journey, but I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that.
I think people get too attached to their ideas. I think people don't focus enough time on figuring out product market fit. Because I mean, a lot of reason why you do business is because you do strongly believe in whatever product you're trying to make. But you got to also temper that with like hearing what real customers are saying, not your friends and family, because they will likely tell you things that you want to hear, even if, like, even subconsciously. And I think a lot of times people get distracted by like, what's the branding? What's the name gonna be? Like the website URL, stuff like that. And it's like, nah, you can get away with, like I was telling you, we originally hand stamped those bags. Like I designed the original logo with some like random font, like, it wasn't what it is today, but it was enough for us to get feedback to turn it into what it is today.
I love that. Preach. I totally agree with it. And I love that you also built your own website. I think our first website was, we paid like $800 and I was a product manager. So I was like hands-on and I can do enough work. And that was another life that I had after finance. But I love it because you're right. So many people are like, I need the perfect name. I need the perfect colors. I need to work with a branding agency. And it's like, yo, are you selling product? Like put all the money once you've proven that product market fit. So I love that your story is starting so scrappy from your garage for so long, you guys creating the website, stamping the bags. You guys really scaled to a decent amount before I'm sure you shifted everything too. So I love that because I think, starting small and seeing where it goes is just so powerful. And it's so cool to see how far you guys have gone. And I'm curious, in the Woobles journey, you mentioned, sometimes some people outside of Woobles, just like in their business, are so stuck on their idea. Has there been anything you guys have tested or tried that you had to completely pivot and nix as a business?
So far, not yet. I would say, yeah, we abandoned a bunch of pre-Woobles business ideas. But at the Woobles, I think actually it's been pretty smooth. Oh, well, I mean, this is extremely random, but like we did release t-shirts at some point and we were like, oh my gosh, dealing with like sizing and stuff like that.
Sizing, totally. It's not as fun. I know people are like, when are you guys gonna have swag? We have just like swag because I wanted stuff. We don't sell it. We just gift it. But I'm like, sizing, inventory, I'm good. I don't want to think about that. But no, that's so fun. And I'd love to maybe hear. Maybe we can end on, what are you excited about next? I know you're almost welcoming baby number 2, which I'm so excited for you guys, but would love to kind of hear some stuff that you're looking forward to personally or in the business.
Yeah. Well, baby number 2, yes, is going to be a whole other era. And like how do you balance business with a growing young family? Business wise, I think what I'm most excited about, one, is that like we're doing a lot more. So our origins are as a D2C e-com company. But I think we've hit a point where it's like we're trying to change how we think about ourselves as well, and just being like, how do we become a more timeless brand in general? And so we are like pushing into more retailers, physical retailers and things like that. So I'm curious to see, how that changes things, because it's a very different sales channel, and like what kind of customers can we reach if we go that way.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And, I know you mentioned, I'm always so curious, and people always ask me to ask our guests questions about just managing family with a growing business. You guys have one. How old your
Other
son?
one,
Yeah,
daughter. Yeah.
daughter.
Other baby is 19 months old.
Oh my gosh, so young. So how has that been? I mean, did you guys need certain support system, or how have you managed a little one? And Woobles is still also your little baby too.
Yeah. Luckily, we have all grandparents within a
Great.
15-minute drive here. We also had a nanny, and then now our kid is in daycare. So we'll have a nanny also for the new baby. But yeah, definitely having help and realizing that we can't do it all. We need help.
No, totally. I'm so glad you're saying that. I can't remember who it was, one of my friends, and she's a business owner and she had her first kid and she's like, I don't understand how like all these women that you interview, they have kids, they have businesses. I'm like, they have help because she hadn't set up, her help and support yet. And I'm like, they have either, like you said, grandparents and support nanny. When the kid's older, like you said, they go to daycare. So I appreciate that because I think some people just are like, they're doing it all. And I'm like, no, it's not how it works.
No, yeah, I'm like literally not possible. Yeah, I think I was talking to someone on our team who's like, my best friend, she works from home and like takes care of her 2-year-old. So I'm like, so you really mean she takes care of her 2-year-old and is probably not actually working?
How?
Yeah.
I don't have kids yet, but like maybe her job is more flexible. Yeah, I'm not sure what that looks like, but I love it. Well, I'm so excited for you, Justine. I'm really looking forward to Woobles being in retail, seeing it become more of a timeless brand, and excited for your little one. Do you know if it's a boy or girl, the
Thank
second
you.
one?
It's another girl.
Yay!
We're
I love it.
sisters. Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. But no, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a good time too. You asked quite insightful questions.